And we are back to What Did AI Say? At VickyL-4AI on YouTube. Thank you so very much for coming back to the podcast. Gratitude is always the attitude. Let's go ahead and jump right into today's question. What did we ask AI? And we're going to start with ChatGPT. How did the rights Black Americans fought for end up becoming laws benefiting all minorities and white women? Oh, that's a good one. Here we go. Many of the rights won through the struggles of Black Americans became protections for broader groups because the legal arguments, constitutional principles, and legislation involved were framed around equal treatment under the law rather than rights exclusively to one racial group. Let's read that again. Many of the rights won through the struggles of Black Americans became protections for broader groups because the legal arguments, constitutional principles, and legislation involved were framed around equal treatment under the law rather than rights exclusive to one racial group. Wow. So we did exactly the opposite of racist. Let's continue. Key examples include equal protection and civil rights law. The modern civil rights movement challenged racial segregation and discrimination, leading to landmark legal and legislative changes such as Brown versus Board of Education, which established that state-sponsored racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that just got rolled back. Although these measures were largely responses to discrimination against Black Americans, they were written in broad terms prohibiting discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Once enacted, courts and government agencies applied them to many groups. Why white women benefited. One notable example is the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination. During congressional debate, sex was added as a protected category. As a result, women, especially white women, who were the largest female demographic group, gained legal tools to challenge workplace discrimination. Later, court decisions expanded protections against unequal pay, hiring discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, sexual harassment. These developments benefited women of all backgrounds, including white women. Why other minority groups benefited? The legal principles developed in civil rights litigation were also used by Mexican American legal defense and educational fund advocates for Hispanic Americans, National Congress of American Indians advocates for Native Americans, Asian American civil rights organizations, disability rights activists, religious minorities. Courts often relied on precedents established in Black civil rights cases when evaluating discrimination claims from other groups. Let's repeat that. Courts often relied on precedents established in Black civil rights cases when evaluating discrimination claims from other groups. Coalition politics. Many civil rights victories were not achieved solely by Black Americans. The movement included Black activists, white allies, labor organizations, religious groups, women's organizations, and others. As a result, Many participants envision broader protections against discrimination. Interesting. ChatGPT would throw that in there. But what do you expect? They're always going to try to downplay what is done by us, Black people. For example, figures such as Bayard Rustin, Thurgood Marshall, and Martin Luther King Jr. frequently frame their arguments in terms of universal civil and human rights. Of course they did. They had to, or they would have never been passed. An ongoing debate. Some scholars and activists argue that broadening these protections fulfilled the movement's ideals of equality under the law. Others argue that benefits became more widely distributed than remedies, meaning some of the specific economic and social disadvantages faced by Black Americans were not fully addressed, even as legal protections expanded to many groups. This is very true. This is extremely true. Others argue that benefits became more widely distributed than remedies, meaning some of the specific economic and social disadvantages faced by Black Americans were not fully addressed, even as legal protections expanded to many groups. So very true. Yeah, that is extremely true. As a result, there are differing perspectives on whether the expansion of civil rights protections represents the success of the movement's universal principles, a dilution of its original goals, or a combination of both. Most definitely a combination of both. Okay, that was a ChatGPT summary. Let's go ahead and move to DeepSeek's answer. And just in case you forgot the question, allow me to ask it again. How did the rights Black Americans fought for end up becoming laws benefiting all minorities and white women? The landmark civil rights laws won by Black Americans in the 1960s were framed around race, but they were written in broad, powerful way that ultimately opened the door to equal protection for many other groups. This happened through deliberate amendments, strategic legal arguments, and the inspirational spillover effect of the movement itself. Okay, that's basically what ChatGPT told us. Let's continue. The master key, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act is the clearest example of this expansion. While its primary goal was to end racial discrimination, a last-minute addition dramatically broadened its reach. The poison pill backfires. To derail the bill, a segregationist congressman, Howard Smith, a Democrat from Virginia, proposed adding sex as a protected category, believing it was so absurd it would doom the entire act. A victory for equality. The bill, including the amendment, passed anyway on July 2nd, 1964, unexpectedly making it illegal to discriminate in employment based not just on race, but also on sex. Unforeseen consequences. The addition of sex provided the legal foundation for the modern women's movement. It helped millions of white women and women of color enter better paying jobs, leading to the biggest increases in earnings for women as a group. Don't you love it when someone tries to sabotage something and it ends up backfiring? That's so nice to watch. Let's continue. Extending the franchise, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that's been rolled back. Aimed at ending discriminatory practices like literacy tests against Black voters, it was later expanded to protect other minorities. Language minority provisions. In 1975, Congress amended the act to protect language minorities, requiring bilingual ballots and voting materials for citizens of Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and Alaskan Native heritage. A tidal wave of equal opportunity. The principles behind the Civil Rights Act inspired other laws that tackled discrimination in housing, education, and government programs. Ending housing discrimination. The Fair Housing Act was amended in 1974 to prohibit discrimination based on sex. Its protections have also been applied to families with children and people with disabilities. Opening school doors. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, prohibiting sex-based discrimination in federally funded education programs, was directly inspired by the 1964 Act and has dramatically expanded athletic and academic opportunities for women and girls. The legal battleground, the 14th Amendment. This should be good. Originally passed to guarantee equal rights for formerly enslaved people, the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause has been used in countless Supreme Court cases to strike down discriminatory laws for all citizens. While it took longer for courts to recognize sex discrimination under the 14th Amendment than race discrimination, it now protects all Americans from arbitrary and unjust state actions. The power of inspiration and organization. The power of inspiration and organization. Perhaps most profoundly, the tactics, language, and moral authority of the Black Civil Rights Movement directly inspired other groups. A blueprint for change. Leaders of the women's movement and other activists explicitly adopted strategies like grassroots organizing, nonviolent protests, and legal challenges, having witnessed the success of the Black-led fight for equality. Let's read that again. A blueprint for change. Leaders of the women's movement and other activists explicitly adopted strategies like grassroots organizing, nonviolent protests, and legal challenges, having witnessed the success of the Black-led fight for equality. Building on a legal framework. Legislation like the Equal Pay Act of 1963, though separate, was part of this same wave of reform. Later, this legal framework would be used to argue for the rights of the LGBTQ plus community, as courts recognize that discrimination based on sexual orientation is a form of sex discrimination. Okay, we're at Deep Seek's final thought here. If you're interested in a specific piece of legislation like Title IX or the Voting Rights Act, or perhaps the role of a key figure like Martin Luther King Jr. or Betty Friedan, Deep Seek can provide a deeper dive for you. Okay, so there you have it. How does any of this affect our daily lives? I wanted to ask this question. I mean, I've asked it before, but like I've said in previous episodes, and like I said at the beginning of this year, I'm trying to do a little bit more of following some of the trends that are going on online. And as many of you know, for whatever reason, we know. I think that ChatGPT and DeepSeek just let us know why racist white people do attack Black Americans specifically, and why they condition and brainwash other minority groups into doing the same thing. And it is because our fight for equality brought about these changes that racist white people never wanted and did not like. And because of that, that is why we are attacked and continue to be attacked by minority groups that have no idea what the history of the United States is. how to deal with that is interesting because, a lot of you who are watching this particular episode, episode number 105, know that an Asian man online challenged Black Americans not to buy Asian products or use their services or eat their food. And I find that extremely interesting and very ignorant because, again, our fight for equality inspired Asians to have rights in the United States. It inspired all of the minority groups to have rights in the United States. And so, what is extremely intriguing to me is the fact that as Black Americans, as this administration rolls back our rights, minority groups and white women don't realize that their rights are being rolled back as well. That is intriguing to me. And so just watching all of this unfold is very interesting, extremely interesting. And it's most definitely going to be a test of our resolve as citizens and as a country. I always say to people who ask me, what is going on with Americans? How could they vote for Trump? Why would they ever put him back in office again? And all I can say is that I love my country, but I am ashamed and embarrassed by my government. And that remains true. Unfortunately, as a people, we have allowed our government to get completely out of control. And on top of that, we've allowed racism to take over. And I truly believe that American white racism and Zionist racism are working in tangent to destroy humanity. And I just love how other countries are fighting it. And I mean literally fighting it. And I hope and pray that we as Americans continue our fight against it in all the different states and do our part to reverse the disaster that we have made. Okay, what is our positive saying for this episode number 105? Okay, here we go. I found this and I thought it was very interesting, and so I wanted to share it with you. This is by an educator by the name of, where's my magnifying glass here? Paulo Vieri. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Racist systems often lead to the oppressed dreaming of becoming the oppressor. Let's read that again. Racist systems often lead to the oppressed dreaming of becoming the oppressor. Woo! That's a mouthful right there, and I completely, wholeheartedly agree. Completely, wholeheartedly agree with that statement. Woo! The conditioning is thorough, and little by little, it's like to succeed in the racist systems, minorities have to sell their souls. And why? Why would we ever want to be like these racist white people? I don't know. I don't have that desire, and I know that there are many others like me who don't have it either. So we have to just question those among us who feel as though being like these people, being in proximity to these people, is something to is something to brag about. Is something to like be proud of. Ugh. I mean, those Epstein files completely turned my stomach. So much of it I could not even finish reading. But that's me. Okay, that's all I have for this episode, number 105. Thank you so very much for giving me a little over 20 minutes of your time. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. We the people have the power. See you next episode. Peace.